more and more, I mean, look at the number of people that are turning to this in various ways now. And therefore, they are in a panic mode increasingly, throwing everything at us like a cornered rat. We're going to see more manipulated wars. We're going to see more manipulated terrorist events that are created by the very people that then say we need more control of the people because of the terror. We're going to see an economic crash and many, many things, all designed to destabilize us, to put us in fear, in stress, to distort our ability to be affected by this vibrational change. But it's a last throw of the dice. Yes. You know, it's desperate. It's going to become increasingly desperate. And what's of course happening now is the more that people are informed of the techniques and the agenda, the more difficult it is for them to sell the agenda. When they say, you know, oh well, this bomber, he was going to bomb the plane and bring it down over America, and you look at it, you go, the only thing the guy did was set his underpants on fire, right? And they're talking about, and it was an expert bomb maker in the Yemen, because they're targeting the Yemen now, it's the new Afghanistan, who did the bombs in these packages from UPS and FedEx the other day, and he was the bomb maker who's an expert who did the bomb with a guy in his underpants, and I'm thinking, he's a bloody expert. Not one of the bloody things has worked yet. You know, he scorched his bloody underpants, burned his bum. The other ones never went off because they weren't bombs. It's all a scam. It's all a lie. But the great thing is, more and more people, you look at 10 years ago, 15 years ago, oh yeah, it's Al-Qaeda, it's dangerous, so they've got to protect us. And now more and more people are going, it's a bunch of shit they're telling us. It's getting more difficult for them. And every day that passes, it's going to get more difficult. So Big New Man, you were underestimating that awakening. I tell you that, underestimating. You hang about and see.
So people who are awake are very, very dangerous for the system. They're going to, it's going to be very contagious. So that's why we're making their job more and more difficult.
That's a very good word, actually, contagious. And the reason it's contagious is because the more people know, the more people get access through the more people who know to know. And so it becomes exponential. I was talking to people in Barcelona today who do blogs on these subjects and stuff like that in Spain. And they were saying exactly what I've experienced, and you mentioned earlier you've experienced, this sudden surge in interest, sudden surge in awareness. It's a fantastic time to be alive. You know, it really is, because we're going to see this control system that has imposed itself and suppressed the life force, the spark, the spirit of humanity for thousands of years, and we're going to have the privilege of playing a part in bringing this nonsense down. And bringing it down not just for the good of humanity, but for the good of these pillocks who are behind the control system, because anybody who needs to control, needs to have control over, needs to control events, and he's terribly uneasy with any states of flux. Oh, I don't know the outcome. Oh, they are incredibly insecure people. Secure people don't want to control everything. They're happy to flow with life. and therefore, in the greater scheme of things, the end of this control system, he's actually going to, ironically but true, it's going to set the controllers free. Because at last they can start to face their true nature and their lack of power when faced with, you're right, you've got a cough. Their lack of power, she needs some healing. Their lack of power.
She's a student anyway.
In the face of true consciousness. So everybody wins in the end, but those behind the control system are going to have to face that they're in the end times, not our end times, the end times of the control system. Though it won't seem like that for a few years, maybe in the mainstream, but It's coming, and it's coming in my lifetime. I ain't leaving till it's happened, I'll tell you that. I won't tell it.
So you're not going to take the flu shot this winter?
This is an important thing. There was it must have been one heck of a shock to the control system last year when they thought they were going to roll this swine flu jab out right across the world. Yeah. This could have been part of why Brzezinski said what he did. That certainly would have been part of the reason he said it. And suddenly, the whole game collapsed. You know, the house of cards came down. Why? Humanity said, no, we're not having it in vast numbers. So what they're doing now, this is why we have to keep streetwise, we have to keep our eyes on the ball. They're putting the swine flu shot in the seasonal flu shot. Now, there's one way of avoiding the swine flu shot, and that's not to have the seasonal flu shot, which actually means you win both ways. Because you don't get poisoned by either. Yes. You don't get your system imbalanced by either. You don't get your immune system attacked by either. So we need to be aware of that, because I know that a lot of people do not realize that they've slipped what people rejected last year into the flu shot this year, trying to hide it. I think they learned a big lesson last year with the swine flu. Don't hype it too much, because you put it on center stage, and then all these people on the internet and around the world can then shoot you down and say this is the real reason for it. We're going to have to get a lot more focused in a way, because I think they have learned this lesson, and they are going to be slipping things in as quietly in among legislation, for instance, that appears to have no connection to some of the laws. They're slipping into legislation that take freedoms away, but not overtly. This is a bill that takes freedom away. It might be for some other subject, and then they slip these things in, the subclauses, and they become law, but people don't realize they're becoming law, so there's no exposure of them. They're going to be doing that more and more and more, because I think they're realizing that when they put their game on public display now, they're asking for trouble.
They have a purpose. This is where it brings us to problem, reaction, solution. Why are they creating the need for people screaming out, like, give us a vaccine, give us a vaccine? There is an ulterior motive behind that when we get down to the idea of the issue of microchipping.
Yeah, I mean, this is the technique that I called a long time ago problem, reaction, solution. It's devastating, but once you are aware of it, it makes it impotent. And it has to sell us a version of a problem. It might not be a real problem. It could be a no problem, like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But it has to give us the perception or a real problem, which they can then offer the solution to. Where problem reaction solution breaks down is when you realize that the problem is there so they can offer the solution. Once you connect the two ends, then the whole process falls down. And this is again what is happening. You know, it's happening more and more as we get this information out. People are not buying it in anything like the numbers they were before. The perception is changing. People are starting to realize that governments are not there to serve the people, pharmaceutical cartels are not there to serve the people, and the system in all its facets are not there to serve the people. It's to serve someone else's agenda. And this is a change in the dynamics of perception of the world, which is devastating for the continuation of this conspiracy that's gone on for so long. It's being dismantled before our eyes by a greater awareness of the fact that it exists for a start, but then how it works. You know, I think of all the things that I've done in the last 20 years, coming up with the phrase problem, reaction, solution, and pushing that technique out and out and out, which the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, they have a Latin motto, Ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. Create the chaos, offer the order out of it. That's problem, reaction, solution. Because when people get that technique, of course, was classically played on 9/11, create the problem, 9/11, reaction, outrage, fear, solution, war on terror, invasion of Afghanistan, by implication, if not directly, invasion of Iraq and so on. More and more surveillance, more and more control of people to protect us from terrorism, full body scanners. All of this came as a result of this war on terror scam. As people understand it, it's becoming harder and harder to play that with future problem, reaction, solution events. And it's going to get harder and harder as more and more people become aware of that technique.
We talked about mission control attacking our physical health, our mental health as well by the manipulation. What about our spiritual side? You yourself had your own spiritual, inverted commas, experience.
My head blew off.
Your head blew off.
Yeah, the rest of me went with it for a while as well.
And then it came back the way it did.
Yeah, it kind of came back and got put together again.
Like, obviously there was something really drastic that happened in your life that was that turning point that changed you from being a football presenter, working in the as a journalist. Something happened there that would you like to elaborate on that just a little bit so people know where David Icke is coming from, you know, because to have that enormous, tremendous courage to go out and speak out against the system, and I still think we've only slightly touched a little bit on it, you know, your talk on Saturday is going to expose it in a very coherent, logical way to build up to the major issues that you're going to expose, such as the moon matrix, reptilians, the secret societies, the 13 families, including the Rothschilds and Rockefeller, who are behind all of this, where there are very, very few people compared with the 7 billion people on the planet who need that, like, kick up the backside to wake up and realize who they really are. So to have that tremendous courage to face that structure and say, this is going to come down, mate. What happened in your life that made you get the guts to go out and speak out on a world stage?
Well, first of all, I can't stand injustice. It makes me, we're not furious anymore, but determined not to accept it. I've always been like that since I was a kid. I was brought up like that. My father was like that. But when I look back at my life now and what happened before 20 years ago, and the experiences I had, which were perfect for what I'm doing now, and when 20 years ago I went to the psychic and was told